So we are back for episode 18 of the End Product podcast, and the End Product just keeps on rolling at this stage. Unfortunately, Tony's not back with us quite this week. He had a double recovery session or something after their cup victory last night, and I think we'll be back seeing Tony next week. But joining me as ever, Stish. Good to see you, my man.
Good, always a pleasure, never a chore, Quinny. And on the subject of End Product, I was just mentioning off air, managed to win a Cesco rare, finishing, I think I finished 10th in the U23 this weekend, just gone. So it was a nail-biting couple of days watching those last sort of, when it tells you could potentially finish 15th. So I started looking at the top end of the tier ones. I'm like, do you know what? The tier ones look all right as well. But managed to hold on for a tier 0, and I had my eye on that sort of area. You can kind of have a look on. I'm somewhere near the bottom of the tier 0, but around that area was like Javi Simons. I was like, I'd love a Javi Simons. But Cesco's there,
Of course.
And I was like, well happy with that. Cesco, definitely a player that he was in my watch list from before, and if he can hit the form he hit last season, I think with some of the other players I've got, he'd be a really useful card. What about yourself? Any end product last weekend?
I actually picked up like 5 cards, and they all sold actually very quickly. They were all decent rewards. So I got, if anyone watched the content last week when I won the Kyogo for finishing second, the player that stopped me from winning the league was a player called Demerbag, or as I've been calling him, Demerbobag. I won his super rare. As a tier 3, and he's actually a really good player, so it was a great tier 3 pool. Managed to sell him for like 0.2, like within a couple of hours or so. I won a Joseph Martinez rare, which also sold. I cannot believe how cheap those cards. Joseph Martinez rares are well underpriced, but I sold mine very quickly. And a couple other bits and pieces in limited and whatever. But second or third weekend on the bounce, where a reward was nice. I was kind of hoping for a bit of midweek action, but I had 6 teams in midweek that all looked kind of good, and every one of them just had something, boom, just been sniped, boom, boom, boom. One player team killed it. So
similar for me.
Not quite a Cesco, but a nice kind of, a busy win for the club, for me. So good weekend, yeah.
Definitely. I think I've started to feel better and better as the last few game weeks have gone on about holding on to that Veerman through all of the good offers I was getting in the pre-season. I was like trying to justify holding on to it, and in my head it was like, if he can win me around 8 ETH in like rewards through the season, then there's no point selling him for 8 ETH now. Or I think that was the initial offer, wasn't it, when we first started talking about it?
Yeah.
And I think, he's been in lineups that won me Van der Voort a couple of weeks back, and now Cesco. It's like probably only like 2 more wins away from hitting that sort of 8 ETH area.
Boy.
I haven't sold either of the cards. I think I'm going to hold on to both of them. It's always nice winning a U23 that's got plenty of years of utility as well. So 2 like elite
both
players, both moving to Leipzig as well. So it could end up with a little Leipzig stack in a couple of years' time. I've got Gvardiol, but I don't know if they'll be able to hold on to him for too much longer either, the way things are looking.
Well, he's just signed a contract extension today to 2027, but that might be in the face of like changing his minimum buy fee and all that crap, so... But new deal signed today for Guardiola, so maybe there's hope.
Maybe. That'd be an amazing little defensive stack, Van der Voort and Guardiola, like a proper U23 beast of a stack, that. Little defensive.
They'll probably both still be U23 by the time Van der Voort goes there as well, which is funny.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like 2 seasons away.
I feel like Van der Voort, it's amazing when you look at cards like that, because he's been on the platform since the beginning, but he's still got about 3 years of U23 utility when you look at his... Sorare data page. It's amazing. That's how young he kind of like established himself.
Yeah, and it's been a bit of mad rise. He got a good score at the weekend actually, without me playing him in a decent team. So I'm hoping he can get himself onto a good run of form on this new matrix. Maybe the new matrix is Van der Voort friendly.
I had a little look at it today because I was trying to figure out what to do this weekend, and my U23 goalkeepers have had a bit of a knock. I think Guyton Cook is still unsure whether or not he'll play this weekend. He's not expected to be out for long. But I was looking at him. I think Muric came off injured in the last game, but that's not expected to be too, like, he's had a scan and there's no like damage. It's just he took a knock on his shoulder, so they took him off. But there's still a chance he will start again this weekend. But I'm fortunate enough to have a few options in the goalkeeper department for U23 now, and yeah, I had a little look at Van der Voort, and the new matrix had me looking at passes completed, because I think that's one of the main ones, is trying to figure out if their pass completion, that extra few points that the goalkeepers get for that, and just having a look at like which goalkeepers play out from the back. And he seems to put up quite a few completed passes. Etienne Green was also one that surprised me. I know he's had a pretty bad start to the season at Saint Etienne, but looking at like his all-around scores from the weekend, the last couple of games where he scored well, he looks like a player who, hopefully, if Saint Etienne can improve, he'll also improve with them. So fingers crossed there. But Van der Voort definitely looks like someone who should benefit a bit. And yeah, I think he's due a little run of clean sheets, isn't he? He's been leaking goals a little bit of late, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't think. I think as soon as the announcement came on and everyone started playing them, then something terrible happened to him, didn't he? Like he sent off and conceded a bunch of goals or something.
Yeah,
It was a bit of a
that's
story
right.
at the time, I recall. But as we were coming into this today, obviously you mentioned there, but Sesko, I don't think he's leaving this transfer window. He'll be staying at Salzburg by all accounts now at this point. And, the transfer window is quietly rumbling on for another couple of hours as we talk them out. And this has been, like, I've got a few group chats, and the theme almost once a day hits in every chat. This transfer window is the craziest ever, like,
It really is, isn't
yesterday
it?
Gakpo was on the way to Everton or Southampton and teams like that, and then Louis van Gaal's making phone calls and cancelling deals and
The Godfather.
yeah,
When you
pulling the strings of Dutch
when
football.
Louis rings and tells you you're not going to be getting into the Dutch national side, you listen.
That's it, because he'll do it. So there's been tons of transfers kind of happening, like for better or for worse, right across the place, and like especially throughout this week, some of these last minute ones. Like I was chatting to a guy, it's Gusto, and he was actually showing me his teams for the weekend on like Monday or Tuesday, and I was like, oh, what about your boy Kudos, the Ajax guy?
Mm.
And he's like, oh no, he's fine, he's going to be staying. And then like on Wednesday it came out he's boycotting training and he's on strike and stuff like that, trying to
Oh,
force through a move, and it's like, man, if something could go wrong in this window, it will.
yeah, I was looking at that as well, because Alvarez is the same, isn't he? At Ajax, he didn't turn up for training today, trying to force a move to Chelsea. After Anthony's gone through at Man United, I think a lot of the players are probably like, this is my time. I ain't getting a training today. And yeah, Kudus
Yeah.
and Alvarez. I mean, if they lose those two today, um, the Dutch window's closed, so they can't bring anyone else in. So they're really going to struggle if they lose two more midfielders before the end of the day.
One player I've seen them like to be bringing in is Florian Grillitsch as a free transfer. He was at Hoffenheim
Yep.
last year, very highly rated. And, so I seen that, and I only seen it because somebody sent it into my group chat. And it's like, if you sell Alvarez for 50 million and then pick up Grillitsch for free, Ajax are just mugging off the transfer window this year, selling Gravenberch, selling Haller, selling Anthony, selling, didn't sell Timberlake, who's
Mazraoui, they
it?
let go, didn't he?
Martinez,
Yep,
Mazraoui.
Martinez.
They've absolutely mugged off this transfer window big time, Ajax, if they do moves like that right at the end as well.
Yeah. There was some talk of them signing Odysseus from Benfica, but that doesn't look like that can go through now.
Oh, is that fell through?
Yeah, I don't think it's happening. It looked like it was a done deal yesterday, but by all accounts, some part of the board of directors like put a stop to it not going through. And they did the same with another signing. I can't remember who it was now, but apparently the Ajax board have stopped a couple of big transfers going through, which is unusual because it looks like they need to bring some players in. But yeah, I think always interesting, isn't it? Who Ajax are bringing in, especially for SO5, is like any player
Yep.
linked to Ajax, the price just spikes insanely. So I had a little look at Grilic earlier because I thought if they do lose another midfielder, he's likely to see a lot of playtime. I
Yep.
don't think the new manager fancies Klaassen as much as Ten Hag did. He doesn't seem to be getting much of a look in this season. Kenny Taylor seems to be the man
Preferred,
on the
yeah.
team sheet at the moment, which suits me because I'm a holder. But always nice to have a few players, as I've found this season. Having a few players as a sort of like core of a lineup, maybe in Challenger or in U23, has been really useful for me. Firstly, because it means you've got less sort of not scouting, but like following who's injured, who's training, who's that. If you're only looking at one club, but you're looking at three players, that's like, right, sweet. You get to know who those teams are, who's likely to start. And I think the problem I had last
Yep.
season was all of my teams were like 5 players from different teams, and it was just like hundreds of teams to follow, hundreds of different players to look at, and like the sort of core of a couple of my good lineups this season have been PSV and Ajax, and just following like 2 or 3 players from those sides, understanding their sort of also like their fixtures and what the manager's likely to do. And I think that one of my worries with PSV at the beginning of the season was the European games, stuff like that. But Van Nistelrooy doesn't seem to rotate that much in his starting lineups. But what he does do a lot of at the moment is where they've got quite a heavy fixtures sort of schedule. He brings a lot of the good players off if they go a couple of goals up, 2, 3 goals
Yeah.
up. You'll see like Veerman, Sangare, Obispo came off on at halftime this weekend because they're 3-1 up. He's doing that a lot. So I've been having to sort of bear that in mind a little bit around their sort of tougher fixtures. Who's likely to finish the game? Because especially for defensive players, you really want them to last the 90, don't you? Because that's when they pick up those double doubles and triple doubles. Because if they played a full 90, pick up 4 or 5 tackles, a couple of interceptions, and a lot of duels won, that's where those bonus points come in, and their all around scores really get beefy. So yeah, it's been
Big time.
interesting watching that and trying to navigate that. But I think like this transfer window, I think a lot of Sorare managers will probably be almost like looking forward to it ending. I don't know about you, but a lot of doubt
Yeah.
thrown in over my lineups and a couple of moves that have come in. Jorgen Strand Larsen was like one of my go-to challenger forwards. He had a good fixture this weekend, but now he's moved to Celta Vigo.
Yep.
Is he going to be rotated? Is he going to be of any
Yeah.
use at all? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he will, but I think he will be rotated. I was actually talking to somebody about Jorgen Larsson signing for Celtic. Yes, I can't remember who it was now. Oh, it might have been my live chat with the member stream. But like, I'm quite fortunate, I guess. I've watched a lot of Celta Vigo last year for no real reason, and they've actually quietly transformed into a club that I really enjoyed. I really enjoy following, and I think the business they are one of the real winners this transfer window for me. They've operated so smart. And anyway, what I think is going to happen with Jorgen Larsson, if you look at so anyone who wants to look at good value champ Euro forward, Celta Vigo is a great shout. So what they've got now is 4 forwards on their books: Aspas, Larsson, Pacienza, and Carlos Perez. Only Aspas was there last year. The other 3 are brand new. Other guys have left. You don't need the background on any of that. And I'm talking to you guys at home. I'm not being rude to you, Stish. Sorry. You don't. There's no need. I'm not going to bore you with who used to be there, right? But I think what we're going to see with those 4 players is kind of what we're seeing all across European football. It's just what you said there with Van Nistelrooy almost, and what we see with Celtic and what we see with all these other teams with big squads is, it'll probably be something like Aspas and Carlos Perez start, or Aspas and Larsson start, and then the 2 guys on the bench, come on in the 60th minute and the 80th minute to keep the legs fresh and keep the tempo high throughout the 90. So I think he'll definitely feature like all the time. I think he's more stylistically closer to Aspas, so I think he's maybe supposed to be Aspas's shadow, because
Yeah.
Aspas never gets subbed, he never gets a rest. He is like 37, so I think
Yeah.
that's the most likely. Like before he even sets foot and we see a team sheet with him being in the team, that's probably what my instinct would tell me. But equally, I do think that he'll be in goals because certainly that attack, it's all about pace. Because in midfield, some of the guys have got like Chervy and 1 or 2 others are really quick wingers, but they play them centre mid so they can just counter an attack.
Yeah.
And then if you get guys like Aspas and Larsson and whatever, they can catch that ground with you, then they certainly are fun to watch, man. So it's a good move, but I don't know how great it'll be SO5 wise.
Yeah, this is it. I don't think he's going to be quite as useful as he was at Groningen, where he was like the guy. His hold-up play is great. He picks up as many assists as he does goals. He's one of those
Oh, really?
perfect scorers. Yeah, for me, I think I picked him up maybe just over a year ago, and at the time I remember thinking I'd got a steal because I'd been watching him and his prices for a bit, and I'd have to go back and see what I paid for him initially, but I remember thinking I got a really good price on him, and yeah, he fell into a little bit of a dip of form, but then once he picked it up, he's really kind of continued. And for me, he was one of my better options for challenger, or and or U23. Obviously, Groningen were not like high flyers, but if they scored, it was usually him in or around the goal, whether it was a decisive from a goal or the assist. And yeah, his all around scores were pretty good for a forward as well. But
If he's
yeah,
got AA and assisting him like that, like hold up play and
yeah,
stuff, then maybe he'll be feeding Aspas, you know, and that'd be quality.
be
Because
great to see if he
Paciencia
does.
is not a starter, and that Carlos Perez has been okay. You know, he's just not really been great wherever he's been. So maybe
I
it's
think
Larson and
this.
Aspas.
It's a bit like what we were saying the other week about Giakoumakis is like, you know, playing outside like Chelsea, Celtic. Uh, when he comes off the bench, he still couldn't easily get a goal. He's very much likely to get a goal. But when you're playing in those sort of like lower to mid table sides, coming off the bench, you're not, you know, you really want those
It's
players
likely.
to be starting. Yeah, like, you know, they're lucky if they get a score over 30 if they come off the bench, because they're less likely to score. And I think so with a player like Larson, for me, it's hard to justify holding on to him unless I know he's a starter in champ, because I'm not really playing champ anymore. I'm only realistically going to use him in U23, and you know, winning a card like Sesko recently, who you'd expect to start more games than not. Also got Fernando at Salzburg, who is pretty nailed on this season as a starter. I've lost Anthony to champ, and he's probably not as nailed. Obviously, I know he went to United for an enormous fee, but no one's guaranteed a starting position in a side like Man United with the fixtures they have, and you know the players he's got to keep happy around him. I do think Anthony will be a big player for Man United, but I do think that you know he's not playing in the Eredivisie. He's not going to get away with the sort of stuff he was getting away with in Eredivisie in the Prem. But I do expect him to do well, so I'm going to hold on to him because I think that the sort of price reaction to his move to Man United obviously being quite a negative reaction, as expected, as a lot of players do, moving from a big club in challenger into a champ side that's not quite, you know, hitting those big scores that they are expected to. So yeah, it's my U23 forward options have taken a bit of a hit. Had one good move actually, though I will say that Yaremchuk move into Club Bruges from Benfica, I think, is one of the beneficial ones for me. So quite happy to see that move, and I think I'm going to hold on to him to see how he gets on there, because he was great in the Belgian division before he did make the move to Benfica. And I think when Nunez moved, we thought, oh yeah, he might get a little bit more of a look in, but you know, I think it's more like that Neres Ramos seems to be the kind of the chosen pairing for them. Up top, they kind of play with the three, don't they, rather than like a front two or like a
Yeah.
single focal point. I don't think that their style really suited Yaremchuk, but I think that he might. I don't. I don't know if he'll start or not, because I think Juckler has absolutely set the division on fire, and he's like on in top form there. So if they're looking at Yaremchuk as a backup to Juckler, I don't see him starting ahead of him. But if they see him as a kind of like almost like the false nine, maybe he could play there. I don't know. What do you reckon to that
Well,
one?
maybe with Jutla, because he has like been killing it now. Jutla, and again, anyone who's looked at him will kind of know this, but he isn't like a top level player. Before Bruges, he'd been playing at Barcelona B and stuff like that, you know. So the reason he's ended up at Bruges is because obviously there was a lot of clubs. Anyone who was interested in him, because his record at that level was good, I've just been like, let's see where he goes and then we'll judge him. So he's went to Bruges and he's on fire. I wouldn't rule out a January transfer for somebody like this if they're bringing Yaremchuk in behind, because maybe they've
Mm,
already got agents already lined up with stuff. It's like, listen, yeah, he's looking good. If he keeps this up in January, we're going to sell him back into La Liga, or we want him to move to England, or whatever the kind of plan is, because you know, you don't unless they're doing this whole kind of, you know, I just keep saying Celtics. That's just who I'm closest to, you know. But unless they are going to go down that Celtic mode of like having like two full sets of attacks that they can rotate between matches or change within the match and that kind of thing. Um, Transfer wise, I'm kind of now attached to Bruges as well with Boyata going there, so that could be a fun team for me to be paying
mm,
attention to. But similar to Celta Vigo, one team that's really caught my eye transfer business wise, especially over the last 24 hours, is Benfica, because not only have they signed Julian Draxler, it sounds like, from PSG, but they've also, looks like they're picking up today John Anthony Brooks from, well, I say from Wolfsburg, it's kind of a free transfer. So we're kind of getting Otamendi out, and John Brooks is the exact same kind of player as Otamendi, but younger. and
Mm.
maybe a wee bit faster and probably a bit taller. Um, and Draxler, who like is very good. And I think Draxler, because bearing in mind the manager of Benfica is Schmidt, the guy that was at PSV last year, I could see Draxler coming in and doing that Gotza role that he
Yep.
played at PSV potentially. And Draxler, like Draxler's been on the bench at PSG for so long, but Draxler is like an attacking mid, kind of like 2-footed, can dribble, and he's really pacey, like really quick. So if you're putting him in the Portuguese league and that kind of, if that's where he plays for Schmidt in that Gotza role, but when Neres on one side, Gonçalo Ramos through the top, and then whatever else is going on around that, guys like Rafa and they've got plenty of talent in the wings. Benfica, Draxler could very quickly become a guy that shows up on a game day with 75 points, no problem. Before anything magic happens, where they kill a team 5-0 or something, because he will be involved in so many of the plays. He will be getting into the box. He will be taking shots. He will be playing passes into the box. So his AA is always going to be there. And as we've seen with Benfica, like they do regularly score more than 2 goals a match in that league.
Yep.
And, we've seen some of the scores Benfica players have done in the past. The problem with Benfica players is knowing when they play. But a guy like Draxler coming from PSG surely plays every available minute. For the most part, he will get rested and rotated. Of course he will. But we've potentially
Yeah.
got another Otamendi who was super powerful but super old. And John Brooks. And then a Draxler coming into Benfica, potentially power player.
I think he'll do really well over there. He's kind of like, it's difficult, going to a side like PSG at the kind of level that he was, and not hitting maybe the heights that people were expected of him. But I think that move for him to Benfica will be a really good one. Like you said, you expect him to become a bit of a power player there, one of the main focal points of the selection. So yeah, I think that's a great one. It will be really interesting to see how they get on. Actually, they do seem to have
Yeah.
done some really good business. I know obviously they lost
They've let
Nunez, but
Julian Weigl go out, and then that guy Arunez has came in.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that. Just having a little look. I just seen news as well while we're recording here that where is it? But Hector Bellerin looks to be signing for Barcelona as well. He's just
Oh, really? And Marcus
uh,
Alonso and
and Mark.
Aubameyang has went to Chelsea.
Yeah, it's all going off, isn't it?
Stish told me about that right before we came on, and we were on to Sorare data, and there's 23 rare Aubameyangs and only 90 limiteds. Like that's potentially a nice wee card, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm just seeing another rumor here that it's like um, Vertonghen to Anderlecht. You seen this
Oh,
one?
nice.
I think that'd be a
Well,
good
Alderweireld
move.
has went to Antwerp and Boyata's at Bruges, so I think that completes the Belgian back three, being at the 3
Yeah,
big teams, or 3 of the bigger teams,
back
Be
home
funny.
again. Yeah, it is all going off. It's so hard to keep up with it, but it's definitely going to affect the teams that I kind of set out 2 days ago as like my week. What I thought I was going to be playing the weekend. Every couple of hours today, I'm just looking at it, I'm like, well, I can't play that now, and this can't work, and this player's now not likely to play. Like, obviously, yesterday we had Paqueta at West Ham. I didn't put him in
Yep.
any lineups this week because I just, it's not very fashionable, is it, to start your brand new signing? I don't know why.
No.
It's so annoying when you're like a fan of the player or the club. So if at Man United, it was when we re-signed Ronaldo last season. I'm like, oh, don't sign him and just stop. Don't start him on the bench. Like, just to be cool about it. Like, just start him. And this weekend, I'm definitely going to be looking at. I'm going to be expecting all of my players who've moved clubs to not start. So I'm kind of my selections are all over the place this weekend. Just where I'm just trying not to select any players who've moved clubs. Yeah, I'm not like they're not likely to start if they've only trained for 2 days or something like that.
I agree. And on that note, Florian Grealish is one step away. It's confirmed now. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I was reading the retweet, but it's confirmed. Grealish is signed for Ajax as a free agent until 2025.
Yeah,
So there's
it's all
another one
going
coming in.
off.
I think
I,
Ajax have had so much change this summer. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to them in the immediate aftermath of all these guys coming in and out of the team.
yeah, I think they'll be all right because the thing with Ajax, they've always got the youth coming through, haven't they? Like they always have such a good academy, machine. And if you follow like young Ajax to see who's playing there, and quite a lot of them have got cards on Sorare as well. A lot of their youth prospects get a cheeky mint or two through the season. And it'd be interesting to see how many of them make the grade. Maybe not just yet, but maybe in January, if they lose any more players, you might see a few of those players step up. So it'd be interesting. But I think from watching them a couple of times this season, they've still got enough quality to compete at the top level in the Eredivisie. I do think that PSV are the better side this season. But I think that AZ have looked good as well. And
Yeah,
obviously you've got Feyenoord there, who are always well worth a watch too. So I think it's going to be a good season to watch. I think Eredivisie is quite a watchable division. I quite enjoy watching a lot of the Eredivisie players and teams. So I think Ajax seeing this kind of like rotation and a changing of the guard, a lot of the clubs in that division will be looking at this as like an opportunity to step up and compete for the league this season. I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion at all that Ajax will be the ones to beat. I think PSV are absolutely smashing it at the minute, and the fact that they missed out on Champions League means that they'll probably do a bit more rotating into the midweeks than they might have done if they were competing in the Champions League.
yeah.
So they, for me,
Keep the weekend stronger.
I think they're the ones to beat this season. Especially now I've been seeing. I mean, I don't know how correct this is either, but just before we started recording, there was announcements on sort of Sky Sports that PSV have said that Gakpo will not leave this window. We might listen back to this podcast tomorrow and be like, "Well, he did," but but as it stands, they expect him to stay. So
Yeah.
that'll
Leuven
be
has been on the phone telling him not
yeah,
to go at the Prem.
exactly. Yeah,
Don't go there. Don't go.
yeah,
I won't pick you.
exactly. But he looked great. I watched him the other day. Absolutely walked over Volendam, and he looked good. He was on set pieces quite a bit as well, which I was a bit gutted about because I normally see Veerman on those sort of like corners and sort of edge of the box free kicks where you're swinging them in, and Gakpo took a fair few. They look good, definitely one to watch. A lot of good,
That boy
good talent
Savio's
there.
exciting as well.
Yeah, that Bakayoko as well looks like a great player. So if anyone listening to this hasn't given PSV a watch this season, I highly recommend it. Good, entertaining, fast attacking football. Xavi Simons looks incredible.
Yeah.
That is a great move for him. I was thinking about that yesterday after watching that match in the week, and I thought didn't PSG just let him sign for free? What was that all about? How did they just let him go for nothing?
I think him and Misha are like best pals, and they get promised, along with maybe somebody else who left this window, like, oh no, we'll definitely want you to break through, and we want you to be the future of PSG and all that, and it's just basically been not happened for 2 or 3 years. They never get anywhere near the squad, and I think he just ran his deal down to nothing and just gave him the fingers and walked out the door, kind of thing. But he was at Barca before PSG, so I think PSG got him as like a 15, 16-year-old from Barca. So the guy's been well educated on football, by this point in his career. And Holland's a great place to go and attack if you're a guy like him.
Yeah, definitely. It's just reminded me actually of that other player I picked up, Fabio Blanco. He's got cards on the platform with Fabio Gomez,
Yeah.
but he's at Barca B. And I was wondering if he'd get a little move. There was lots of players and clubs, linked with him. But I haven't seen anything, so I might be stuck. Might be stuck for a little red cross on him for another season until he gets a move.
The other kind of notes I've got on transfers, these are ones that have affected my gallery. So, like, I've got 2 guys moving from being decent challenger options to being God knows what they'll be champion options. And that is Jack Hendry leaving Bruges for Cremonese, the newly promoted Serie A team, and Ante Palaversa, who is a City guy. He's been on loan all across the world, basically. But he was on loan in Belgium quite successfully, and now he's going on loan to Troyes in Ligue 1. So, and then Serginho Dest is moved to AC Milan, and that could he could just be a mirror image of Theo Hernandez. So if you've ever wanted a cheaper Theo Hernandez, Serginho Dest is the one to get. Under 23, I think he's still under 23.
Yep.
I think he is. And he's very underrated. Dest, like I think he'll do very well in Italy. he'll be a great scorer. He's very good. I can't say that enough. He's again, I just don't. I don't know what it is, but he's been very overlooked when he went to Barca by Xavi. And I think, by all accounts, Ten Hag was trying to get him before AC Milan came in. And I
Yeah,
think
I saw that.
Dest probably wants to go to the Champions of Italy rather than the
Yeah,
Man United dance and song at the
yeah,
moment. But it's one of those ones that I'm sure the transfer window will give us a few more surprises before it closes. But guys like I've got there, and they're not really big fish to me or whatever, but there'll be lots of anarchy going across galleries like that now, where guys that you had, oh yeah, this guy can plug into Challenger for the odd weekend or
yeah,
whatever. Now he's in champion, or the champion guy that was maybe made to do something or was useless is moved to challenger and they've maybe became something or whatever. Like a
yeah.
Grealish or a Draxler, for example.
It just reminded me of another one. So I capitalized on the move or the news of a move. I'm not sure if it's completely nailed on just yet, but it looks like Asta Vranks is also moving to AC Milan.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So I got
Did
rid
you
of
buy
him.
one?
No, I had one.
Oh, you sold
I've
them?
had him for like, yeah, I sold him. I picked him up. I picked him up. He was a really early purchase of mine when I first joined. I started just buying like youngsters
The
that I was
kids.
aware of. Yeah. So I had him from early, and I just held on to him. I just thought, he'll come good. He looks like a player. He's a great player, but his style of play isn't like that SO5 friendly. So even when he did play, he wasn't like his all around game wasn't great. Um, so when I saw that he was linked to AC Milan, I thought, let me just list him because mine had like super high XP. I think it had like a full 10% XP on it, and I
Nice.
listed it a little bit higher than the floor because I thought, people who will want that XP now. And
Yeah.
I got logged back in this morning and it had sold overnight for like zero point 0.2. But I just think that I do have a lot of options in midfield, U23. I'm not really playing Champ anymore. If he goes there to be rotated, which he definitely will.
Probably
Um,
will.
I
Yeah.
watched AC Milan the other week and I thought that De Ketelaere looked incredible. I think he is going to do so well out there. He had an absolutely immense game. But much better than I expected from him. To be honest, I wasn't sure how much of him we'd see, but if he continues playing the way that he did, he could turn into the next Kevin De Bruyne playing the way he did for AC Milan the other day. So yeah, I think a player like Vranks probably will do well over there, maybe in a slightly more defensive role, playing in the pivot with maybe like Tonali or someone like that. He might sort of work as a bit of an understudy to the. So I think they do have better options than him at the moment, but I think that he's a bit more robust. You know, in some of those European fixtures, they'll probably like use him to just boss things a little bit more than some of the players that they have available. But I think since they lost like Frank Kessia, maybe that he
Yeah.
is coming into be a bit more like that guy. Um, but yeah, for me, it was an opportunity to sell. I think I just saw it and thought, I'm not sure how much use I'm going to get out of that card. And if he does go there and ends up being rotated, he might be one of those players that I can pick back up in future for less money than I've sold him for now. But I made this mistake once before with Luca Oyen. Ended up paying point 0.4 for him right before he got injured. So hopefully I won't be. Hopefully I won't be regretting that one. But yeah, interesting move and a nice impact there on my gallery. I definitely need to trim the fat quite a bit, and I think Champ is likely to be, especially like any Champ players that aren't nailed on. They're like the first cards that I'm looking at getting rid of at the minute. So unfortunately, he's. I think that his move from Wolfsburg to AC puts him in an even more sort of like precarious position in terms of selection, and he's been in and out of the Wolfsburg side. So I think it's a great move for him, but maybe not an immense move for his SO5. But we'll see. He might prove me wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think AC do need a guy like him, but I don't think he's. Who knows? We'll see what happens. I don't think he's ready to be a starter for them, but it's maybe something that happens in a year or two. But I mean, it's a really sensible strategy what you're doing there with the guys that aren't really in as much. Like, I don't mind holding on to some of those guys in certain situations, but when you look at a card, if that's the card you should be doing that with or not sometimes. And
Yeah,
if you've had that guy for a few seasons, I know it's like sometimes you get sick of looking at them and saying,
that was it.
"What are you
Yeah.
doing this week?" You get
I
sick of it,
just
you're like, I've had this guy for a year and I've never said once, yes, you're in,
yeah.
ever. It's been like, oh, let me
Oh
go check and who else and who are you playing and when did you get
yeah.
booked last? And it's just a
Yeah,
backside pain.
He's definitely one of them, and I think that last season I had it a bit more. I had that a little bit with like Musiala last season, but Musiala was a
Yeah,
bit different because it's like this kid can play. He is
yeah,
incredible.
clearly
His
amazing.
Yeah, he's just waiting for that season that he breaks through, and he'll be like first name on the team sheet. And I think that he started this season so strongly that I am putting him in my strong teams quite a lot because of the players that they have injured at Bayern as well. You know, like Goretzka's not there, so
Yep.
he's there or thereabouts on the team sheet most weekends, and you can kind of see when he's going to play. Like he started him on the bench in the midweek, so I'd expect him to start on the weekend, and
Yeah.
he's been. And with ranks, it was like he's never had that breakthrough yet, and I've been sat on him through like two, through Mechelen and then through Wolfsburg, and he's never really done what I expected him to do. And I think that AC is again like it's a great move for him, but for his SO5, it just makes him even more precarious. And for point two ETH, I think point two is a nice amount of money. You know, you can flip point two ETH into another prospect that might come a bit better than Ranks did for me. But I think I paid about 60 quid for him at the time I first bought him, and I sold him for what point two ETH, which was about 250 quid. So I can't
Not
really
bad.
sniff at that. That's a decent little bit of business, I think, as well. And when you see profit, that also helps you feel a bit more justified in letting it go. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
totally. I get that. I get people taking those same opportunities on me. Whenever somebody signs for Celtic, the price just goes up all of a sudden. And even if I send a good offer, people still want to reject it because they think I'll come back with a better one. Whereas like
yeah,
most of the time I'm like, I'm giving you my best offer. Like, but we've just signed today, it sounds like it's about to happen, Oliver Abelgard. And he's meant to be a Astor Ranks type guy, you know, a big hard hitting defensive mid.
mm,
And a few days ago we signed Haksabanovic, both players from Rubin Kazan. Um, and I managed to get both of them in limiteds for quite cheap, but the rares are like, you know, point 0.3 for Abelgard. You're talking about
mm.
0.2 for a Vranks. I think I'd probably rather have a Vranks than an Abelgard, to be honest, at this point. And Haksabanovic at 0.4 is quite pricey. Again, because these
mm,
guys are going to rotate in Celtic. I want them because I have, it's kind of what you were saying earlier with the Ajax guys or whatever in PSV. I've got, if I have all the pieces, then
yeah,
if I know that so and so is dodgy, well, do you know what, the other guy, he's playing,
yeah,
let's take him out from the back shelf and just play him this week. That kind of handcuffing scenario. That's
yeah.
the only value they really have for me at this point. So I'm not playing anything mad mental for them. But
I
if
think
I
also
don't
because
think
you're
I've
a
seen anyone else in
Celtic,
the transfer.
you're a Celtic fan as well, so you know that club inside out, and once you
Yeah.
do that, it just becomes so much easier to sort of make an informed decision on what you think is likely to happen. You know the bogey teams, you know the clubs they're likely to absolutely spank, who's going to get rotated, and like especially now, I think a lot of people probably come into the game and just go right Celtic stack or Ajax, or they'll just pick a team, pick up four or five players, and play them as like their kind of go to. But if you've got like those moving pieces as well, and you can preempt what's going to potentially happen. You can be the difference between someone playing a Celtic stack and getting a DMP, and you managing to, walk five of your guys out and pick up a decent score. But yeah, that's the game. That's the game now, isn't it? I think is the knowledge is there's so many cards and so many teams out there that are covered now. You can get a bit of differential in there, and I think that like picking up these Kazan cards, we might they might not end up in the Celtic mint if like the cards have already been, because I'm sure the Celtic photos have
That's the
been
main
updated, haven't
problem.
they? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my only concern. It's just that these are the only ones for the season, almost.
Mm,
I do think that these guys will get pictured rapid and all the rest of it, but with not getting Giacomakis last year, without getting O'Reilly and Juranovic last year, like I'm not going to hold my breath. But
yeah.
that's the only part of it that gives me a sense of urgency. It's just that, like, you know, when these guys, you know, when Abelgard, he'll probably start 3 games on the bounce at some point this year. And when he does, he'll probably score really well. And his price will probably go fucking mental and it will never come back down from it until he gets cards again at some point. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing that gives me any kind of haste around these cards. But I've not chased anyone else down for because they've made a move. And I sold a Jetty actually. I sold a Jetty on the news of his move to Sturm Graz.
Mm,
And that I sold him for 0.1, which I got a Jetty for like a tenner. Like he was my
yeah.
first ever Celtic player. You know, when he moved from West Ham to Celtic, I was all over that. Anyway,
Yep.
and I managed to bring in a Conrad Limer because kind of he isn't going to transfer, and I think that might be a good move for me to get a cheap enough rare mid for somebody who's not moving. But I've
Yeah.
not really done anything else around transfers over this window. One of the things I've been like the most kind of amped up about over the last week is for game week 302, we've got specialist challenger open now all of a sudden, and when this is going to be tested out for the next month or so, we're probably going to see a rare iteration. We're probably going to see a champion Euro iteration. I think that's been promised already in the Medium post for this.
Mm.
These competitions for me are going to be huge for my gallery personally to do some more end products, go and get some wins and whatever. But in terms of like the onboarding process and for the armchair fan to get involved, I think these divisions are going to be absolutely amazing. Have you built a team for this weekend? Have you given the specialist regions much thought yourself, Stish?
I have, yeah, because I've got quite a few limiteds in Challenger, particularly. I had a look at like what my options were in that, like the under 40. That's normally the first thing I do if I want to enter specialist. I
Same.
think what under 40s have I got? And if I've got two half decent ones, then I'll go heavy in there. So I had a little look at what I had available, and I think my two under 40s were Gabriel Florentin, who moved from Argentinos to Orenburg. He played his first game in the week for Oren. Well, he came on as a sub actually and gave a penalty away on his debut in the league last weekend, but played in the cup again. So he looks like he's going to become a regular starter there. If he can play in a similar sort of vein to what he was doing at Argentinos, granted he's in a slightly weaker side in the Russian division, but you'd expect him to start. He's quite a good attacking, creative midfielder. So he could get decisive if they can get amongst the goals. Hopefully he's in amongst them. And then they've got Shan Kelez, who plays up front for Austria Vienna. Uh,
Nice.
he's a little bit of a rotational risk, but I think just seeing that specialist Challenger Europe, it was just really tempting. I love a bit of specialist action on a weekend. So yeah, I had to do it. But I've got Nopper in goal, who has a really good fixture at Heerenveen, so hoping for a clean sheet there. And Nathaniel Santini, who plays at the back for Sion. And I've also got Rodrigal, who plays centre back for Zenit, who puts up absolutely monster scores every weekend. So fingers crossed, my
Sorted.
two under 40 averages can do bits for me, and the other three are normally quite reliable. So hoping to be in amongst the prizes. What about yourself, Quinny? Have you got one sorted out?
Yeah, so I managed to put one out. I had a couple of L15 under 40 guys like Andras Nemeth and a decent defender as well. I can't remember, but I had decent scores. But the guy's worth a fiver or something. It's limited.
Mm,
But I'm not as much like I'll be putting lineups into these, particularly Champ Hero. Champ Hero is the one. Like if we get Champ Hero Specialist rare, or even if I get super rare as well.
mm,
Like for me, those divisions are going to be some of the biggest in the game because, like, no matter what your budget is, like we all don't mind shopping in MLS in Japan and all the rest of it, right? But see the layman, the man in the street that wants to come to this game and give it a shot for the first time, that is daunting, and being
yeah,
able to build competitive lineups with nominally priced cards that are like playing that you can watch on the TV quite easily with most subscriptions that are available. I think is a huge development for the platform, and I really hope these tests kind of work out. In terms of because what I think they're trying to do with some of this stuff is like rather than build the prize pools all the way out, what I've been doing is like going, oh, an All Star Rare Pro, there's 145 places. Over here, there's 60. Over here, there's 55. I think maybe now their focus isn't on bringing that tail down as much as it is widening out where you can play,
yeah,
because if, for example, an All Star Rare Pro, let's say the star rare count in terms of the payouts goes from the top 20 to the top 40, that doesn't really do too much for the new man in the street. That just means more people that are on the top are getting better stuff, if that
yeah,
makes sense. Whereas that extra 20 star rares, if you can put 5 of them in 5 new specialist competitions that need those underdog cards and need the playing goalkeeper and need this and
yeah.
need that and all the rest of it, then they can be won by more people. And I think, on so many levels, I hope these specialist regions really work out, and I think they could be massive.
Yeah, I agree. The thing I love about the specialist and the underdog is, um, some weeks you will have those sort of like unicorns who have somehow end up in that under 40 average. But for the most part, the players that do well in those divisions, if you look at their lineups, they're just like completely random 90% of the time. It's like all you need is one of those like really bad players to like have a worldie, and you're right in amongst it. Because if any of your under 40 averages have like banged a goal or like knocked a 70 pointer in or something like that, and it is exciting, isn't it? In the weekend when like one of your
Big time.
under 40s like bangs a nice 65 or something in the earliest part of the game week. And yeah, I love the idea of that. I think it is definitely something. It is always really tempting as well, isn't it? Because I think that I like the gambler inside me sees the specialist as like, you can put a couple of like really pants players in there and potentially win an Mbappe or something, and it's like you will never get near an Mbappe win putting any player that's got an
No,
average under 40 like in the last 15. You just That's just never going to happen. But
no.
it can happen in specialists. So in underdog and specialists, if they start rolling out those regions, and any of us, I think like for people like me and you who've been around for a long time, we've probably got quite a few cards that are just sat in our galleries doing not a lot because we haven't been bothered to keep relisting them for sale or something like that. And I'm fortunate enough that like my laziness in terms of like how often I put things up for sale, this is going to pay off for me if these like regions start rolling out, because I've definitely got a lot of really bad players in some of these regions that can start hopefully getting some end product in for me. But
Doing some
I'm
bits.
I'm a big fan. I think like the specialist and underdog is a little bit more like um a bit more of a pure way to play the game. It obviously does rely on you to have those extra cards or invest more again, I suppose. But in terms of like the the bragging rights, if like I'd love to win the underdog or the specialist one week, like that for me is like the best prize on the game. And if they can notice that by making sure that the winners of those divisions do get rewarded the best cards as well, then you're going to see more of those top end, the Mbappe and Neymar's played in the specialist instead, and that'll hopefully break up those sort of top 5 to 10 positions in the champ. You won't see that PSG stack up there because a lot of those people who own those players have an option for specialist champ that week, and they're going to use them there. And I think hopefully it will just start to trickle out, spread those stacks out a bit more. And I think that's something that has annoyed a lot of people, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's too competitive in maybe in Champ and All Star where someone could just roll out a Bayern or a PSG. But if Challenger Champ or Underdog Champ looks really like potentially lucrative, or is really appealing, then you're going to start seeing some of those stacks lost to Challenger, to Specialist divisions. I think that personally makes sense. Another thing I think as well is, I think I said this to you in the week. Something I think that made me think straight away after last week's goalkeeper matrix change. Noticing, a lot of people complaining about their goalkeeper scoring like an 8 or something like that for conceding 5 goals. So I had like Kevin Trapp, who's the number 2 goalkeeper for Germany and plays for Frankfurt, who are a decent side, right? Uh,
Yeah.
he put up a score of 3, and it made me realize that he's going to be really useful for a specialist in a few weeks if he keeps this up. Like he's going to find
Yeah.
himself in that under 40, and I think a lot of goalkeepers, barring the sort of like top 5 in each division, anyone in that sort of like challenging for Europe down to relegation is going to find themselves in that under 40 average a lot with the new matrix. And as much as it's annoying if you hold those goalkeepers, as most of us do, I do think it will open up the option of using a goalkeeper in the specialist, where using an elf and like an under 40 L15 being a goalkeeper where the score isn't
Brilliant.
as likely to be high, that makes challengers super appealing to me. If one of my under 40 averages is a goalkeeper, I'll be like, that normally makes me go heavy in it. If I've got a goalkeeper that has a decent fixture but also happens to be in that under 40 average, and I think we're going to see a lot of goalkeepers slipping into that in the next few weeks, once like the old matrix scores start to die off and all the new ones come in, because a lot of goalkeepers are going to be putting up these sort of like lower, 15s and stuff. Because if they let in 4 or 5 goals, as a lot of goalkeepers have been doing of late, we seen how many 9-0s did we see last weekend? I feel like there was like 3,
2, maybe 3.
2 or 3, yeah. And we're going to see a few of them, I think, especially with the clubs being able to use 5 subs. Like Manchester City bringing 5 subs on is just obscene. Their 5 subs are like, they could probably play against 11 men, those 5 players they bring on, and they probably still do all right. So teams are going to get battered, and goalkeepers at the bottom end of most divisions are going to feel the brunt of that. So I think specialist is going to become really appealing to people who don't hold those Donnarummas and the Neuer cards. So really intrigued to see how that pans out for people who play in that kind of like medium-sized gallery. Even the larger galleries. A lot of people have the larger galleries do have them goalkeepers as well.
I think even for like the kind of smaller galleries as well, there's a lot of players that now have value that didn't, because bang average champ Euro guys especially, nobody's interested in, like
No.
absolutely nobody, champ Euro bang average or subpar, no thanks, no one's interested, so it gives them something as well as the goalkeeper dynamic. I never even thought about that. That's an amazing point. And then if you did get a guy that's like a good champ Euro player in your club somehow, you bought one, you won him, he has a purpose. There's a point in keeping him now. Whereas, like, if you won like a good champ Euro guy, I've heard people saying it on my show and other podcasts and whatever, but it's like, oh, I won this great guy, but he's champ Euro, so like, why should I keep him? I'll just go and get Carlos Heel or something instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it gives them something now, gives them a place to live and thrive.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is part of the reason that I kind of started looking at my gallery, especially my champ, and thinking without a PSG or Bayern base, or like maybe a defensive or attacking sort of miniature stack, or like the old sandwich as we like to call it. I've got a lot of big players in champ, but I can't compete. Like I've got Tony Kroos, but I'll definitely use him in a specialist if that comes, because I've kept hold of Kevin Trapp. I got rid of Dimitrievski, so I do only have one champ Euro goalkeeper now, but I've barely used him in champ since getting rid of Dimitrievski. Kevin Trapp, very rarely keeps a clean sheet at Frankfurt, so I'm quite excited at the prospect of a specialist, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that will welcome it, because I do think that like competing in Champ Euro, even with some good cards, is very difficult on a weekend where PSG, Bayern, PSG, Bayern, Liverpool, those kind of teams that can hit a big score on a weekend. If they do that, you kind of, no matter how good you hit, it's very difficult to get above like a tier 2. And like you said, those kind of like run of the mill wins in Champ are not much use to anyone. I definitely won a few of them myself, mostly out of All Star, but I have ended up with a load of like mid-rate Champ cards that are of no use to me really. I have to try and use them in All Star. I kind of force them into my All Star teams sometimes. It's annoying because I don't know if you get this, but sometimes I'll be putting my All Star team together, and I know in the back of my head I'm like, well, that guy's a challenger and I haven't run that team just yet, or that guy's he's under 23. Maybe I don't waste him here. And I just find it always, All Stars a pain for me because of this at the moment. I'm like, I don't know what to put in there. My All Star teams always look really good on paper, but I should put stronger teams into them maybe. But
well, I did extra strong in All-Star Rare last week, and I finished 100. Like I built the team, and I was like, I expect top 200 with this team, so I built a good team for it. And I finished 100, and I got a tier 2 rare, which was Joseph Martinez. And I think if you pull a Joseph Martinez out of tier 2, that feels like a good price pool you're fishing in. You know? So like, I've tried to keep it strong again, but this week I had that voice return, that voice that you're mentioning. Like, oh, what about this and what about that? But I've tried to put it a bit higher in my build order, if you know what I mean. So I'm trying to be just like extra like strict with myself and really looking at it and going, right, like last week I won 4 or 5 cards, right? That's kind of how many teams I should be building. I think that should be like, powered up, strong, good
Mm.
fixtures, good cards, whatever. So I then kind of, what I've been doing over the start of this season is take myself back and thinking, right, where are those, let's say 3 teams, first of all, the 3 ones I really want to strike. And it probably wouldn't surprise anyone which ones they are, but it's wherever the Celtic Super Rares are going to go with the unique All-Star Rare Pro and Under 23 Rare Pro. And then from there, I think I've maybe got 1 or 2 other teams that should be capable of cards. I'm trying to keep All-Star Rare one of my top 5 builds because I'm quite light in a lot of areas and I don't need to make any compromises in All-Star, with midfield especially, as I've mentioned quite a lot of time on content. But I could play like Lewis Morgan in midfield and have a whole Champ Euro team around him, for example, because it's that works, and then after that, I'm then just looking at what pieces are remaining and what I think could be the best build for them, whether it's a champ or a challenger or a D4 or a D2 or whatever. And I've actually ended up building some underdog teams like in that running order. And last week I tried to really prioritise that, and the Giakoumakis DNP, if he played, I would have done really well. So I'm finding that's kind of
I think I might have made the same mistake. I think I had Giakoumakis in my underdog as well. I think he killed mine.
Killed it, man. I had a really good shot at doing well. I had Captain Rio Hatate defender cards that did 100 because of the clean sheet bonus on it, and a few other good cards, and that kind of killed me. So I'm trying to do that because I do think like I really do kick myself anytime I don't get Big ETH, if I only get 205 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think if you go strong enough, like if you have a strong enough team, that team in All-Star Stish, I finished 100. Spot 100. Right, I don't know why I struggle to say 100th, but I do. How many points do you think I got?
370,
380. 390.
Yeah.
I thought you'd have said 400 or something.
I mean,
the scores are
what do you think about that? Is actually that is big, isn't it? Really, I'd maybe expect that a bit more in pro. Like anything over sort of 370, 380, you would expect. But I think that like you said, that a Joseph Martinez tier 2 is surprisingly good, and that is like you said, like it's down to the prize pools in All Star actually being pretty decent. Like even once you get to the tier 2, 3, it's almost like relative, isn't it? Like that is tier 2 if we consider the entire pool of players. Like there's 2, whereas like tier 2 in a region is like not a particularly good player from that region, so they wouldn't even be in like tier 5 in the All-Star.
Yeah, exactly.
But it has, like you said, it is getting harder and harder. I put out pretty strong teams, but it seems to be like my bogey division. I get DMPs in my All-Star teams all the time at the moment, and looking at what I've lined up so far for this weekend, I know I've got Cecilia in my pro, and it's like he has, we don't really know, is he injured, is he not, like it's he looks like a risk to me already for this weekend, but the rest of my team, Jo Hyun Woo, Ulsan's goalkeeper, Pavel Boshnevic super rare, Takuya Iwanami super rare, they both put up massive scores every weekend. Christian Naboa, who has like an L15 of 75 or something stupid like that, and Cecilia, who we all know about. But I look at that team and I'm like, there's a DMP in there. There's, I don't know. It's just every weekend, this league, this division evades me somehow. I can't remember the last time I had a win in All-Star Pro, but it always looks great before the game week starts. And it's always the first one. And I can tell you now, I'd almost put money on Cecilia not starting. It's going to happen, isn't it? Like I've searched and far and wide to find out as much information as I can. Sent him a DM on Instagram, which he's ignored. So Cecilia, if you're watching this, mate, check your DMs.
Get out here.
But I would just love to know if he's going to start. I feel pretty good about that. But yeah, All-Star Pro just evades me.
I tried to be extra. I tried to like really. I said a moment ago, being extra like disciplined with myself, and I really tried to put myself back into Quinny's shoes 12 months ago. So when I built my All-Star Rare Pro team, I literally just said, I don't care about if this is the only team I can build, who am I building? And in goals, All-Star Rare Pro, Van der Voort, so not playing him in under 23s, get a great fixture. Trippier, super rare, not playing him in Champ, even though he'd probably be quite good in Champ this week. They've got a good fixture. Marcelino Nunes, the wee guy that plays at Norwich that I picked up for under 23s, who is also Challenger. I'm playing him in All-Star. Jota, who's also U23, of course, and then my spare, super rare Kyogo.
Ooh,
So like,
that's a
so I've,
big team. Yeah,
that is like, so the problem with that team, right, is if you take out the two super rares, it's an under 23 team, but I don't have under 23 pieces. Like I'm more worried to put Jota into under 23. He bangs, and I get drowned out with Mbappe's and all the rest of it because of
yeah, yeah,
U23. I'd rather put him in All Star along because I don't have that many options in midfield as I've spoke about too many times even today. But I just think if I'm going to have one team go off, and defensively, I don't want to be attached to Celtic's result because Rangers could score a goal or two.
yeah,
So I've got Van der Vaart, Trippier, and Nunes as the midfield and defence, and then I'm just throw the Celtic attackers at it, and then I can enjoy the game hopefully and don't need to worry about us conceding any goals like I will be for all the other teams where I've got Celtic defenders and goalkeepers lying around
yeah,
in, So I've tried to keep that a sober, like, so there are teams where I'm building the Celtic ones, other ones I'm like, yeah, we're going to beat them 5-0. Play them out
yeah.
and like, but try to keep
No,
one team at least where I'm staying somewhat realistic.
yeah. No, knowing that it was the Old Firm this weekend, the first place in terms of prize pool I looked at was Challenger because I thought I'm not competing with like a Celtic 9-0 probably. Who knows? Like until the
Yeah,
game,
true.
but I thought that's if Celtic are going to have a tight game anywhere, it's that game, right? Can be cagey, might be tight,
Agreed.
might get
You can.
scrappy. If they're ever going to lose, it's going to be Rangers probably, and not likely to be many other teams that might beat them. So the first place I looked was Challenger, but then I compared that with the U23 pool, and a lot of the cards that I'd want to win in Challenger actually are in the U23 pool as well. So I decided to put my big guns out in the U23 Pro this week. Surprisingly, I've not got Veerman in what I deem to be my strongest lineup this weekend because they've got FC Twente away. I've decided to put Veerman into my D2,
Ooh.
which is still a strong side, but um, I expect him to start. I think they're going to have a slightly tougher game. I've gone in my sort of main. This is my main lineup at the moment for the weekend. This could change. It often does before the game week opens. But I've got Safanov in goal. Plays at home to Sochi, which is a tough fixture, but his all around is pretty decent. Looking at the new
Yeah.
matrix, he gets a lot of touches for a goalkeeper. Seo Yong Woo for Ulsan. He's playing an away fixture. I think they're playing a weaker side. I know that. I've got Musiala, rare captain. Expect him to start and be amongst the action as he often is. Al Hassan Yusuf, who has been an all-around beast, got his super rare in there, and then Fernando up top, who plays at home Salzburg against. I think they play Tyrrell this weekend, so good fixture for them. They've been pretty decent the last couple of weekends as well. So that's my main team. And normally I'd probably have like Veerman in amongst it, but I really fancy Musiala. And like I said, Yusuf has been really good in terms of his all-around. And he's actually bagged a few decisives in the last couple of games as well. So he often puts up a 70, 80 plus, as can Veerman. But I just think Veerman's got a slightly tougher fixture. So I decided to move him into D2, U23. My challenger teams are looking pretty decent as well. But yeah, my main one was the U23. I decided to go there. I've had to do a bit of shuffling around Challenger because of that Jorgen Larsson.
Yeah, last minute changes.
Yeah, had to do some. I'm sure it won't be the last change either. I'm sure by the time the transfer window closes later today, there'll be more changes in some of those teams. There's a few players of mine that are linked here, there, and everywhere, and a few players that have like question marks over injuries. I know like Devon Wrench went off injured in the last game because he clattered himself into the advertising boards and then got covered in beer by the other team's fans. But
Yeah.
apparently it's just a bruise. But there's no news on whether or not he's been training. So I've got him in my Challenger Pro, but he could definitely be changed around a bit as well. So yeah, I figure I'm going to be tinkering a lot before this game week opens tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I think I will be as well. Well, I'm kind of set now. I did a bit of tinkering before coming on, and that moment where you're really trying to scratch an itch. You're like, there's something not. I really need this guy needs to go in a team. This is after I've done my kind of priority teams, and I'm trying to just, can I squeeze one of these out? Can I make this team a bit better? Can I get a 7th team that might be capable of something, doing all that kind of stuff? And then I think I unlocked the matrix earlier. I made it work. So I'm up to 18 teams for this game week, and it feels like all the ducks are in a row. I'm actually putting a Champ Euro Pro team out because I do think that the divisions may be getting that kind of treatment from everyone who doesn't have, like, Bayern have got a decent fixture this week, but everyone else in Europe, all the big teams, if you look at the Italian fixtures, it's all big team versus big team. I think PSG have got a good fixture, but I don't think it's like, I don't know, but
they should walk it.
So I'm putting out some players that individually could have good matches, and if the two of them are in one team, so across those 4 games, if it was to go my way, I've got Robbo in a derby, which should be fun, and a few other bits and pieces, so I'm kind of hopeful for that. But I think this will be a great game week for all involved. I've got tickets, proper hospitality, shirt and tie effort for Celtic versus Rangers at the weekend. Stish knocked back the ticket.
I wanted to come. Do you know what? I called in my sort of like my trump card already. I've been to Ibiza this week, so that going to Ibiza Monday and Tuesday night, getting in at 1 a.m. Wednesday. I've had the kids for 2 days. To top that off, I've got a gig on Saturday night. So if I turn around to my missus, I was like, I'm going to fly to Glasgow for the Old Firm. I'll be back in time for that wedding that I've got a DJ in the evening. Don't worry about that. So yeah, I've never played at anyone's wedding before in my life, right? And I'm doing it for a promoter who's booked me for years. So the pressure's actually on. I don't think I've ever been nervous about a gig like this, but it's someone's wedding who is a promoter. So like the expectations can be high, but also the territory of DJing at a wedding with like all the guests being drunk, coming up to me asking, can I play this and that, scares the life out of me. Because for anyone out there doesn't know like what a sort of club DJ's job is like you're kind of allowed to just go and do what you want. Whereas if you're at a wedding, you are at the mercy of all the guests asking you to play this, that, and the other, and expecting you to. If you tell them you haven't got that, they'll be like, well, what are you doing here? Because that is what a wedding DJ is supposed to do. And it should be all right because it's like a promoter's wedding. Everyone in there should understand that the DJ has just been booked to play what I'm going to play. But
come and play a set.
Oh, I am scared about it. So the idea of going to the Old Firm, which is right up there on my like to-do list as well. If this had been any other weekend, I guarantee you, I'd have just snapped your hand off for that. I'd have come up, definitely. But it's probably going to happen about 7 times this season, isn't it? So it's always a million Old Firms. But if that ever arises again, 100%, I'll be there with bells on. But
so I've got all my Celtic attackers laid out, shirt and ties ready to go, and it's going to be champagne reception from 10 a.m. in the morning. The game starts at 12:30, so I probably won't have my camera on me. We'll probably do some recording and stuff like that, just some banter, some drunk stuff around the table and whatever.
Yeah.
But it should be a great game week for me. I can't wait. It's going to be great on all the levels, hopefully. Prizes, big game for Celtic, Old Firm, and everything else that flies around it.
And hopefully some end product on the SO5 Matrix.
That's it. And on that note, Stish, if you have enjoyed this podcast, anyone who's listening to it, please do rate, review, like it and follow, turn on bells and notifications, let your pals know about it, all that good stuff, of course. Stish, have great luck this game week, mate.
And to you too, sir, and great chatting, as always. Good luck, everyone.